to take this opportunity to, open the floor up for you guys to really share, what your ideas and your experiences with, addressing masculinity.
What's going on?
Man, we back
Together again.
We doing nice.
Fly dresses.
Yeah, I like that.
We do stay fly though.
Yeah.
I'm a simple guy. Jeans and t-shirts.
Rob said you got the Ghostface Killer joint.
Yeah, got the Ghostface Swan going
Swan,
on. You don't see a
Grace.
swan on everybody. So,
Grace.
so you got to bless them every once in a blue. You dig?
Yes,
Indeed.
So how's everyone doing?
Great, man.
Good.
Vibe was right. Can't
Blessed.
complain.
Right, mental health intact, the armor's up.
Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
Definitely.
Good.
Always.
Stay vigilant.
Well, I wanted to, we have a really special guest coming on later on in the show. And, we're going to talk about some of the thoughts and the idea behind masculinity and defining masculinity for Black youth, right?
Heavy.
And,
Heavy stuff.
from an artist.
That's heavy stuff.
Very talented artist. And so what I wanted to, I want to take this opportunity to, open the floor up for you guys to really share, what your ideas and your experiences with, addressing masculinity. That's a topic of discussion that comes up a lot in my circles with my friends. How we define it, how we look at it, how we've navigated life as men.
What you thought it was and what it really is.
Yeah.
Right?
I've learned recently that through a friend that she said that she doesn't particularly care for the term toxic masculinity, right? Because that can mean a lot of different things. But we talk about that a lot. We talk about, but then I've learned recently, through Chrys that masculinity isn't reserved for just men. It's not a gender specific thing. There are women who identify as being masculine as well. So, what's your take on that?
So many layers.
Right.
It's so many layers
It's
to it.
deep.
You know what I mean? It
Just the
is.
thought
It's
of it
very
is deep.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting conversation. So I am very feminine, right? But I have very masculine moments. I think a lot of that comes from being the only girl. I had 4 older brothers as well.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I have 2 sons. So I've been surrounded by men for quite some time. My mother, she and my father divorced. And so I was raised in a single family. So my mother had to do a lot of things that I think historically we would deem masculine.
Right.
Everything around the house, including taking out the trash. She was taught by her brothers and uncles and things like that how to change a tire and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I think I can agree with the fact that masculinity isn't reserved for just the male species.
Right.
I mean, I can say for myself, I am very masculine when I need to be independent, when I cannot rely on anyone else. I could be very masculine when I'm talking to my sons sometimes, because my relationship with them became kind of more in that direction when I split from their dad. We were together for 15 years and then we got a divorce. So I'm their primary caretaker. So to go along with what Chrys is saying, if I'm getting it correct, then that could be a possibility, yeah. And I'm speaking from my own experience with that. If any of that made sense, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It made perfect sense. Me, as a young man, I'm the baby of 6, the nephew to 13. And for me, my experience growing up, trying to understand not so much maybe masculinity, right? But I guess if we define masculinity with being a man, trying to understand what masculinity meant and being a man meant. Because in my family, just for me, you know, while I love all my uncles and everybody that was around, the women are the ones who raised me, who taught me the principles and the characteristics of what a responsible man should be. So it's through the women that my understanding of what I should do as a man, as a responsible man should be, which kind of defined what masculinity meant to me. Because what does it mean when we really think about it, right? Sometimes we think masculinity means you don't show emotion, or that you can't hurt. You know, there's times where I grew up with that.
Right.
But being raised by women, I have a nurturing side to me that was embedded in me that, you know, I have this thing where I have to look out for the people that I love and I care about.
Right.
So is that so much a masculinity trait, or is that a manhood trait, or is that just being a responsible adult and what we should do? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So, you know, with Chrys, you know, posing this question or bringing masculinity to the forefront, I think is something that we really have to really look into. What is the definition of that? Is it arrogance?
Definitely.
Is it pompous, you know, some type of pompous attitude that some of us men walk around with?
Showcasing bravado.
You know, bravado.
Yeah.
Is that what masculinity is?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that she's bringing this to the forefront, because it's something that needs to be talked about.
It's ocean
Especially
deep.
in the black community.
Yeah.
It's ocean deep, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not something that you can tackle, you know, within our 40 minutes here.
Right.
No.
But it's an interesting topic.
It's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Well, as it relates to me, you saying something?
No, I'll go ahead. I'll chime in later.
As it relates to me, masculinity, and specifically as it relates to women, all my life I've only attracted alpha women. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when I got to the point where I'm like, all right, I can't deal with alpha women. they too much of a headache, right? But then I would manifest more of a softer spirit.
Right.
But then the softer spirit, like, man, damn, she weak. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like a battle for me to kind of like deal with the alpha woman and kind of like the soft, I don't want to say soft spoken, but more of a softer spirit.
Demure is what they call it, I think.
What is it called?
Demure?
Demure?
Demure. Demure.
Okay.
Forget that.
Okay.
I was gonna say I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
Whatever you just said.
I gotta remember that.
Right,
I'm
we
gonna
got
look
your
it up.
back.
I'm gonna look it up
Yeah.
actually. But while dealing with the alpha woman, I'm very alpha myself. So
Right.
you know how I go.
Yeah.
It's like heads knocking and understanding and all that. But also coming up, like my mother and father was together while I was growing up. So I came from a mother and father household, Caribbean background. You get what I'm saying? But my father kind of like ran everything, like the boss. But he was in the military, retired from the military. So he's a militant.
Right.
So how we was raised, militant, like you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I always just had this boss like mentality and just militant mentality when it came to everything I did. But my mother and father never showed no emotion together towards each other.
Right.
So that also, I saw that, and as I got older, I didn't really show any emotion. Even to this day, I still have a hard time showing emotion to women. But when it came to a point, probably I would say like when I was like around 25, a woman was the one that kind of like showed me how to be, I don't want to say less masculine, but show more emotion.
Yeah.
And it's okay
It's
to,
okay.
you know what I'm saying? Because I was
Yeah.
just like
Nah.
stiff, like, I don't
Nah.
open doors, like, like, wow. Like, now that I think about it, it's wow. I was
It is
like,
wow.
I was on some, but it was also the street influence, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't open doors. Like,
Yeah.
I don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
you do for me, I don't do for you. That was
Right,
kind of
right,
like
right.
the mentality I had.
Right.
But it wasn't until I got with a woman, like,
Yeah.
and she was an alpha woman too.
Yeah.
But she kind of like showed me like, okay, no, this is how you supposed. Oh, so this how you treat a woman. You know what I mean? 'Cause my
For
father, I
sure.
didn't learn that from like my father. You know, the Jamaican background, the Jamaican culture is wild, kind of.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
So it's
right.
like I didn't really learn that, but I definitely have my experience with alpha females, and it's pretty interesting. But on the topic of toxic masculinity, or even masculinity in general, is very deep.
Yes,
You
it
know,
is.
It's
It
deep.
is. It is.
It's deep. But I feel like as a man, you gotta understand yourself as a man, and you gotta feel comfortable with yourself as a man to let your true art, your true talent
Yeah.
speak out to the world.
Right.
But if you're not comfortable in that as a man, in your masculinity,
Yeah.
you'll never be able to give your true self to the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And how much of that, I like to call it social engineering. How much of that, as a child and as a youth, how much of the I guess the stereotypes and the bad programming or the social social
Yes.
engineering that was sold into us as a kid, how much of that did we grow up with, and we're now exhibiting that in our art, and a lot of that could be like I said, like you said, it's not your truest form of yourself,
For sure.
and you're not getting the most out of that in your art as well because of the programming that we had coming up as kids. But each of you shared a lot that it's a lot to unpack. But one of the things that I think you said, Moan, that's key in terms of the alpha male, and Rob, I think you mentioned about showing emotion.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of dealt with it, throughout. Like my dad is like super alpha, right? He's like, that old school man's man. Doesn't say a lot, but when he does, he speaks with a lot of authority and power. And he wasn't very expressive, So the image of masculinity and that whole alpha male thing that I saw growing up was, you showed your love and things through your action. You didn't really speak a lot.
Right.
And shared a lot. So I actually ended up becoming the opposite of my dad, right? I'm very expressive. Like, so much so I think sometimes my wife be like, can you just,
Calm down a little bit.
you know what I'm saying? Like, I get emotional, I cry. She'd be like, man, you a crier, aren't you? But I mean, I learned that, because I have moments where I could be super alpha, then I could be beta, but I'm very confident and comfortable in my skin, and I know who I am, and I know who I am as a man, and I don't have to display it in a lot of toxic ways or unhealthy ways.
Right.
And I know what we were taught, a lot of it was challenging growing up, like I identify a lot of it with, growing up being a womanizer. You know what I mean? We were taught, where we came from, it was like the more women you had, the more masculine you were.
More of a man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, it took me a lot of broken relationships, destroying women emotionally, and going through a lot of heartache to step back and reprogram my mind and how I dealt with women and how I treated myself, as a man, like how I define myself. Like, is that being masculine?
Right. Right.
And if it is, I gotta hurt all these people to be masculine? Like,
Right.
so.
I think every man goes through that.
For sure.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's part of our, it's every man is an engineer like that, but socially, depending on the environment where you come from, you've been taught these things, and we have to go through this period of self-mastery where we have to dispel a lot of this stuff.
And understand where those things are coming from,
Right.
because a lot of these things are taught. I mean, just think about it. How many of us have seen a single mom disciplining her son, right, for doing something wrong, beating him, and then after they finish, telling them to shut up and be quiet,
Right.
stop crying,
Right.
right? So sometimes as men, we grow up in these communities, and I'm not blaming this on the ladies. Please don't think I'm blaming this on the ladies. I'm just saying this is what happens. And then we become these men and we don't know how to express ourselves.
Emotion,
Right?
yeah.
So just for me and my
Yeah,
son,
that's
I have a
right.
23-year-old son. I told him it was okay to cry. You know what I mean? Because I wanted him to be able to articulate what he's going through versus acting out what he's feeling, the anger that he's feeling. You know, in our community, I feel like so many times instead of being able to communicate and understand that part of being masculine is being able to articulate your truth, whether you're hurt, you're in pain, you're crying. You know, that's something that I learned on my journey, that being able to articulate and show those things is what a part of being masculine is.
And it's so
right?
funny.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny. In my relationship, Zeke is more like you. And I am more, I keep everything in. And I know how that can feel. So I'm teaching my sons now that you need to be able to, one, you need to know how to navigate your emotions.
That's very
Don't
true.
let your emotions take over you. Know how to navigate them. And the best way I explained it to them is that I make tea every day in a kettle.
Oh, nice.
Old school.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so they were in the kitchen one day and we had a discussion about emotions the night before. So I used that kettle and I'm like, when this kettle builds up so much steam, it's going to whistle.
Yeah.
And that's a person inside, when you hold or keep everything bottled up, eventually you're going to whistle. You're going to blow. You're going to, you know, and it may not be at a time when you want it to. It may not be, you know, so you want to make sure that when you feel that steam, you know, building up in you, that you release it gradually,
Indeed.
timely, you know, in a healthy way, so that you're not. So I'm teaching them that now, but I'm actually teaching myself that as well. And Zeke is teaching me that because he's actually very good at communicating. I shut down, you know, so, and I think that is from growing up around a lot of males. My brothers are very alpha, if you want to call it that. And they don't speak about their emotions. It's just like all day. You know, so I picked up some of that. You know what I mean? And I'm totally not. I'm feminine when, you know, you're looking at me. But when it comes to my internal little workings and wheels, not at all. And so, you know, when I hear, you know, my friends, my brothers that are talking about their girlfriends and some of the things they get upset with, I'm like, I'm gonna pray for you, dog. I'm gonna pray for you because it's not that serious. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it kind of, it's just, I guess it depends on what you have been around because, like you said, everything is learned behavior.
Everything is learned behavior.
Yeah,
Facts.
and some stuff need to be unlearned,
Right.
and that's why this is so ocean deep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear what they have to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
likewise.
I think that's a good segue or transition to bring them on. You know, get their perspective and hear their story.